Hello, I'm Andy Day, CEO of the BC Parks Foundation, and this is a presentation about conservation financing in British Columbia. So what is happening? Well, the province of BC has entered into agreement with the foundation where we will act as the conservation financing mechanism in BC. What does that mean? It means that the province of BC has kicked in $150 million into a fund that will support area-based conservation, so protecting areas and education. And that will produce a range of benefits such as Indigenous protected land, corridors for wildlife, food security, climate resilience, sustainable jobs and wealth, resilient communities, Indigenous reconciliation, biodiversity, and a generational opportunity to transform BC's economy and landscape. BC Parks Foundation has committed to raising $150 million in conservation financing to match the provincial government's commitment and to produce those wonderful benefits. Why is this happening? Well, first of all, we've got an amazing historic agreement between First Nations, the province of BC, and Canada that will address species loss and climate change. This agreement reflects the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People Act and commitments to reconciliation, and it includes a goal of creating a system of lands and waters totaling 30% of BC by 2030. That is an international target, and BC can be a world leader in protecting 30% of this province. Additional goals in that agreement relate to protecting over 13,000 square kilometers of old growth forest and recovering wonderful species at risk in BC. What a conservation financing mechanism can do is attract, leverage, and managing finance from multiple parties and streams to produce those great durable conservation and co-benefit outcomes. The province is committed to creating that mechanism and has transferred the funds to the BC Parks Foundation, and the nature agreement references alignments with it, so the two things work well together. What we get with a conservation financing mechanism is increased certainty and incentives for parties to protect areas. When you don't have that, governments and First Nations tend to be much less willing to undertake all the costs and risks where the reward is uncertain or not there financially. You also get increased durability and stewardship of protected areas. And when you don't get with conservation financing is if you get any kind of park or protected area created, that often comes without the ongoing management resources and local buy-in, or those things change over time with different political parties. You get increased coordination of funding and negotiating, so funders and financiers can work together, leading to less duplication and wasted resources, and also with different funders coming in with different amounts and you create inflation and expectations of costs, so those can be kept down. We get to identify some near-term priority projects that we can focus on to get across the finish line, but also cultivate a future stream of projects because we have this long-term financing mechanism to move those projects towards completion. Otherwise, you're doing one-offs and a scattered approach with very uncertain outcomes and little opportunity to prioritize. Finally, we can align conservation funding, philanthropic funding, financing with government commitments and agreements. So governments say, we will do these things, and then financiers can come in to make those things happen. And if we don't have that, you've got investment risk. So financiers are not willing to come in because they don't know whether governments are committed. All right, so how does this thing work? Well, there's three key parts to making this work effectively. First is getting the governance right. Second is getting the project stream that we talked about. And third is the financing. On the governance side, we want to make sure that First Nations, who are key joint landowners in BC with the province, are part of this, not only in proposing the projects and bringing the projects forward, but also in the oversight of the fund. So the BC Parks Foundation, long-term stable entity, is the administrative house for the fund. The fund is overseen by a strategic oversight committee. Half of the members will be First Nations. And then the donors, the donors circle, are able to converse with the strategic oversight committee and commit funds or financing into the fund or into projects. And donors is a general term for all different kinds of financing. No projects will be undertaken without the free, prior, and informed consent of First Nation sites and title holders or their delegated organizations. There will be opportunities to advance co-management with First Nations of these areas, and any projects will be aligned with government-to-government agreements. The projects will be visible to funders, so people in the conservation finance can see the size of the projects, the percent that is going to contribute to the 30 by 30 goal, and also the values like biodiversity or other co-benefits that are within that project being protected within that project. And again, you can create that long-term stream of projects so you're moving things through to completion. The stages that projects will move through will be early community planning stages, government-to-government land use planning, and then the designation and implementation. Alongside of that is addressing the threats on the landscape, so those might be tenures or encumbrances, and aligning those or doing transactions with those that bring them into alignment with conservation and allow the protection of these areas. So the key with conservation financing follows something called a project finance for permanent approach. And that is something that was developed in BC in the Great Bear Rainforest and has now been implemented in 8 or 9 countries around the world who are leading the way in protection. What it means is that the funds get used first in that early community planning stage, that seed funding. That's a reasonably small amount of the total. And then once projects get to the point where the governments have mandates and have committed, then at that point of commitment, the finance side of it comes in to make pledges to say, all right, we will also join this commitment to protect this area and this many hectares. And if you go through all the steps to get there, we will release funds when that designation happens. So this is a common kind of financing thing. It's almost like, you're buying a house, you remove the conditions, and then when the conditions are removed, the actual transaction happens. So along the way, there might be funds released to remove threats or otherwise align things with conservation, but the big bulk of funds are released when the governments make the long-term designation. Those funds then get used to implement the protected area so that there's jobs, there's protection, there's stewardship of those areas through time. The BC Parks Foundation is the official charitable partner to BC's world-class system of parks and protected areas and our conservation financing mechanism. So we've got a great track record of success. We've done over 30 projects and about 80,000 acres of land in the last couple of years. We raised over $400 million. And we also do other work on health, education, and stewardship. We have tens of thousands of supporters and followers across all demographics of BC. British Columbians love BC and want to keep it beautiful. You can read more about our board on our website, bcparksfoundation.ca, about us, a wonderful, fantastic, visionary group of people. So what happens next? We've just established that Strategic Oversight Committee. They will be engaging with First Nations and with the Nature Agreement Committee of federal, provincial, and First Nation governments. And we will also be talking to people in the conservation financing realm. And we're really looking to get advice on how to design this fund so that it can unlock conservation finance from multiple sources. We'll launch the fund in May or June, and then we'll start doing funding for projects. If you have ideas and thoughts around how to bring conservation financing, unlock conservation financing to reach this incredible 30 by 30 goal, please get in touch. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day and look forward to hearing from you.